Memorizing tomato flames can be tough and kind of annoying. There's a slightly different way that has worked better for me, and I want to walk you through it here that really just tries to explain it more logically, because I really don't like rote memorization. I like trying to understand the why, because then that helps me memorize the what. So let me walk you through it. Hope it can help. So here is the flashcard I made for tomato flames. But one problem I have with the tomato flames acronym is because there's so many repeated letters. There's an O, there's an O, there's an M, there's an M. Here's an A, another A, another A. So anytime I'm like, hey, have I done the A? How many A's have I done? Which one am I missing? Like, to me, it just doesn't flow very well. If it works for you, great. But to me, what has really helped is actually what I put down here in this, what we call a tip from the tower section. Okay, is like a slightly different way to memorize this, which I'll walk you through it. But it basically just tries to say, hey, don't worry about memorizing this list. Think it more logically, like in terms of engine instruments, avionics, and safety, okay? And so the way that I try to remember that is I live in Dallas. There is a booger of a highway called 635, okay? If you live anywhere near DFW, you're nodding your head, because this thing is always hung up. There's always traffic. It's always under construction. It's just tough. But 635 is how I remember tomato flames now, because we're going to reorganize it into 3 different categories that have 6 things, 3 things, and 5 things. Highway 635. So the 6 is going to be engine instruments, 3 is going to be avionics, and 5 is going to be safety, which if you put all those together, it's the first 3 letters of easy. It's maybe a stretch. It's a silent Y or an implied Y. I don't know if you want to memorize it that way, but it's easy. But it's 635, okay? So let's take the 6, engine instruments. And if we look at, here's my panel in my 182. It's actually pretty intuitive, the 6 engine instruments that you need. And I also have a G1000 version of this here in a second. But in the top right part of my panel, I know this is a little bit hard to see, there's a few core instruments here. We got oil temperature, oil pressure, we have cylinder head temperature, which is not the same as an engine temperature in like a liquid cooled engine, but it helps me remember it, that's one of the things. And then you have 2 fuel gauges here that are connected, okay? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the 6 we have to do. Okay, and then you come down here, we have a manifold pressure gauge, and we have a tachometer. Mine's digital, okay? But when I just think about the right half of my panel, the majority of stuff is what's required there by regulation. Or if we go over to the G1000 here, it's pretty similar. You have oil temperature, oil pressure, you have cylinder head temperature, which again is not required. The engine temperature is for a liquid cooled engine, but the CHT just helps me remember it. You got those 3. You have fuel quantity. Okay, and then you come up here and you have manifold pressure and you have tachometer, you have your RPM. So most of what's shown on just the default view on the G1000 are those required instruments. You don't have to have, the fuel flow and the EGT and stuff like that, but the majority of these are required. So if we come up here and we make our list of 6, which is engine instruments, we can reorganize some of this tomato flames. So I like to start with oil pressure, followed by oil temperature, just because then you can also immediately follow that with engine temperature, like oil pressure, oil temperature, engine temperature, right? So you got a temp gauge, okay, there's 3. And then you also have the fuel quantity indicators here, which is fuel gauge, okay? And then you have the tachometer and the manifold pressure gauge. Okay, so there's our 6. Now we go on to the 3. Remember, we're doing 635 here, Highway 635. 3 is going to be avionics. This is the easiest one because there's only 3 of them. If we go back to a couple pictures here, I know this isn't very well lit, but this is my 182 again. All the FAA requires here is some really basic stuff that's pretty logical. If you're flying an airplane, you're going up in the sky and you are moving, right? And so if you think about that, what are the gauges that show us that we're in the sky and we're moving? You have the altimeter and you have an airspeed indicator, and then you also need a compass so you can know which way you're pointing or whatever. But that's it. Those are the only 3. If we come down here to kind of more legacy 172, this is a little better lit. Got your airspeed indicator, altimeter, and your compass. Those are the only 3 that are required. So if we come back up to tomato flames here, we can grab those 3 and reorganize it. Okay, and that leaves us with the last part of 635, which is going to be safety. And if you need an acronym here, you can think of SAIL. Think of like fire sale, fire safety, I don't know. That might be a stretch. But think about it in terms of these 3 things. This is what you're going to need from tomato flames is safety belts and shoulder harnesses. If you count those as 2, that's how you get to 5 here in a minute. But if we move that in, that's like the number 1 thing you're going to need for safety. Safety belts, shoulder harnesses. You think about anti-collision lights for your A, your strobe lights, they're blinking, they help keep you safe, see and avoid other people. And then if we're going down to land, you want to know that your landing gear is down, so the landing gear position indicator is there. And then if all else fails and you really go down, you need your emergency locator transmitter. So these are a little bit random, but if you think about it logically, you want your seatbelts and shoulder harnesses, you want anti-collision lights, you want an ELT, you want to know that your gear is down if applicable. So these are the last 4. This might require a little bit more rote memorization. The SAIL acronym can definitely help you. So going back to our flashcard over here, this is one of the features I tried really hard to incorporate. Down here, what we call this tip from the tower section. It's not on every card, but the best we could. Anytime there was like a helpful mnemonic or maybe a different way to think about or memorize the content or some extra context to just help the content make sense, we tried to add that, just other ways to try to make this easier to memorize. If you'd like to check out these flashcards, you can get them over at airplaneacademy.com/flashcards. There's over 350 in the set. They cover just about everything you need to know as a private pilot. We put so much work into bringing these to life, and they're trusted by a lot of pilots, got a lot of great reviews. Link is down in the description or on your screen. But if you need a different way to memorize this stuff, if like, hey, Charlie, that was helpful, but can you give me more? There's a video I made. This is one of the very first videos I ever made that has another method of memorizing tomato flames. And I read a book on how the world memory champions memorize like the order of a deck of cards or something, like totally random information, and they get really good at it. And I applied it to tomato flames. It's another way that you can memorize this stuff. So that video is on the screen, and I hope it helps you. I'll see you there.